What's up, you guys? We are back at it again with video 4. I wanted to start off with talking about the situation in a province in China called Guangzhou and what's going on with foreigners, because honestly there hasn't been a whole bunch of news coverage on this. I mean, I've seen a couple articles. The Washington Post did cover it a little bit, but I've only seen a couple people talking about it on the internet, so I kind of wanted to cover that a little bit just to give you guys more of like a sense of like the seriousness that like especially African foreigners are having to face currently. So let's get started. A lot of people don't actually know this, but there is a very large population of Africans in Guangzhou. I wouldn't call it large, but it's bigger than your average population of Africans in China, considering there aren't too many. But essentially, why there's been a lot of racial tensions there lately is because 5 Nigerians were tested positive for COVID-19, which led to like many like Africans being evicted from their homes, and a campaign was launched to test and track all Africans in the port city. Which I think the idea of focusing on testing people because of race instead of because of like contact history is kind of messed up. Just because 5 Nigerians tested positive for COVID-19 doesn't mean like all Nigerians in Africa have it, and I think that's pretty messed up in my personal opinion. And actually, because of these evictions, many Africans have been displaced. Like that, they can't get hotel rooms because hotels won't let them stay there because they're afraid that they're carrying COVID-19. And I think it's really messed up. Like, there is a quote from the article I read, from the LA Times, and it says, "They roamed the streets in the rain and slept under highway overpasses, huddled on the pavement in face masks. They filmed videos of police shouting at them, pressing young men to a wall, and of signs posted in apartment buildings and restaurants, including McDonald's, saying, 'No blacks.'" Sound familiar? Yes? No? Maybe so? And I actually know the one place that this is being talked about is on Twitter, and a lot of videos are going around on Twitter showing like Africans walking through the streets being followed by police, being harassed by police, sleeping on the streets. A lot of them are just sleeping on the streets on top of like a blanket or like using their backpack as a pillow. And it's scary because that also puts them more at risk for getting COVID-19, like having to sleep out on a not so clean street. And it's like they're all still wearing masks too, which means that like everyone is still taking this very seriously. Like no one wants to get it. Yet you see people being forced out onto the streets, having to sleep there, which makes it more likely for more people to get it. And a lot of people are asking the question right now, like, why is there so much like hostility towards Africans aside from like the 5 Nigerians being tested positive for COVID-19? And the reason partially is because a lot of the newer cases we've seen in the past 1 to 2 weeks have been imported cases. But the thing is, even these imported cases they're Chinese nationals. It's not like they're foreigners, but the problem is when people think imported cases, they automatically think foreigners, which has caused a lot of heightened fear of resurgence of COVID-19 and also a lot of xenophobia. Also, like to add to this, there has like been pre-existing like racial tensions between the black population and Asians, especially in China. Like interracial marriage between someone who's black and someone who's Chinese is still like looking down upon greatly, and also like there's a lot of racial slurs used against specifically like the African community in China. Like a lot of people like call them like illegals or a bunch of illegals and things like that, which is like kind of fucked up. And like most people have to understand that the Africans in China right now, most of them are not undocumented. Most of them are there like on some form of visa or something. And even if they were undocumented, that does not justify treating people like dogs. Nigeria's government has also spoken out against this and actually condemned what is happening in China towards like not just Nigerians, but like the black community as a whole. And I hope that like more governments start doing so because this is actually pretty messed up, and I think it really like it's against like human rights in my opinion. And I think we also just need to be holding each other accountable as well as our own countries accountable for racism. I mean, and I don't think culture is an excuse for being racist either. If like culture, if we could use culture as an excuse for being racist, then we'd still have slavery in the US. And I think like we simply cannot allow like other countries to use culture as an excuse for racism. But I would also like to remind people that as a whole, the Chinese people do not all have the same thoughts and ideas. And there are also people, like a lot of Chinese people who are volunteering right now and are out on the streets feeding these Africans who have been displaced and have been pushed out of their homes and are not allowed to stay in hotels. It's also interesting to note that like I'm kind of surprised that this is happening in China right now, especially with everything that like the Chinese government and the Chinese people have gone through in terms of discrimination with COVID-19. And like while I think yeah, we can judge China for like we can definitely 100% judge China for doing this towards the black population. I also would like to add that we are no better as a country and that we have discriminated against the black community just as much as China has. And that collectively as a world we need to like fight against like racism and discrimination, and we can't just say like be pointing the finger that that country is bad and only that country. Like you also have to admit that your country has faults too. Additionally, I am extremely surprised that the WHO has not said much about this, like because the head, like the head of the board of the WHO, is Ethiopian and he's very outspoken, like against racism towards like Africans. Also, I'm very curious to see how this is going to affect the relationship between China and Africa because they actually have a very strong relationship. And China has shoveled like tons of money. And like by tons of money, I mean like $300 billion into like sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm curious to see like how that is going to affect their very close relationship in the near future. Anyways, I want to move on. So, the second thing I want to talk about is that the WHO offers educational courses for free on their website. So, I want to show you guys how you can get access to that. Essentially, what you're going to do, right, is type in openwho.org. Then once you go, you can go to login. I mean, I have my login right already, but like what we do is you go to create account and it doesn't ask for that much, it just asks for name, email, address, password, and it's pretty simple. So then once you've logged into your account, it has a saying like my current courses and like classes you've completed and things like that. But if you want to sign up for courses, you just click on courses, and it has a broad array of different courses, and they also have them in a lot of different languages. So if English is not your first language, or if you'd prefer to learn a course in a different language, you can do so. But anyways, once you've enrolled in a course, so let's just enroll in one of these like courses. I've already done this one, so let's just enroll in this one. Um, so it has like discussions, which is just like a random forum for like people to save random things they want to talk about. Your progress. So this is like where you can find like all the stuff that you want to do. And then there's a collab space, which I think is really cool because it's really good for networking. Also, I feel like I need to elaborate on progress a bit more, but like it has like self-assessments. There's like sometimes they have self-tests, they have assignments, or they have just like videos you need to watch. Uh, then there's also course details, which just explains the course. Documents, which is like what you're gonna have to read for these courses, and announcements, but there's no announcements in this one. So that's basically um Yeah, the gist of it, it's really easy, it's free, and you can finish it on your own time, which is really nice if you don't have like the amount of time that you want, like to finish a class. Like, you don't even have to finish a class. And it's also really cool because at the end of each class that you finish, it gives you like a certification thing. So it'll show you, it's like proof essentially that you finished the class, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, the next thing I'm going to be talking about, I know it's going to sound kind of stupid, like the thing where I was like, let's talk about how to put on and take off a mask. Um, it's basically like that, except I'm going to show y'all how to properly use hand sanitizer because I didn't realize there was like an approved way of putting hand sanitizer on your hands and an approved way. I mean, I knew there was like a certain way you should wash your hands, but I guess that also goes for hand sanitizer. So let's just. So, got it spread on our hands right. You're gonna start by like putting your hand back and forth across the top, and then you're going to interlock those fingers and kind of just bring them back and forth to try and get all those fingers. You're gonna sanitize those thumbs. Um, Make sure you get, good and thorough. And that is pretty much how you do it. I know it's stupid, but I don't know. I thought I would just put it in there just to educate, I suppose. So the next thing I want to talk about actually is the collaboration that basically the members of the UN states have made in order to find a vaccine for COVID-19. So they made like an official declaration, which I just wanted to read to you guys because I thought that was interesting. Because I'm kind of surprised that like they hadn't decided to do that already. But it was just like the declaration was just like put up this week, so it's like a fairly new thing. Um, so I guess I'll read the declaration to you guys really fast. It's not too long. Um, it says, "We are scientists, physicians, funders, and manufacturers who have come together as part of an international collaboration coordinated by the World Health Organization to help speed the availability of a vaccine against COVID-19. While a vaccine for general use takes time to develop, a vaccine may ultimately be instrumental in controlling this worldwide pandemic. In this interim, we applaud the implementation of community intervention measures that reduce spread of the virus and protect people, including vulnerable populations, and pledge to use the time gained by the widespread adoption of such measures to develop a vaccine as rapidly as possible. We will continue efforts to strengthen the unprecedented worldwide collaboration, cooperation, and sharing of data already underway. We believe these efforts will help reduce inefficiencies and duplication of effort and will work tenaciously to increase the likelihood that one or more safe and effective vaccines will soon be made available to all." Next thing I'd like to talk about are the protests happening in Michigan. So I guess Michigan decided to get on the Idaho bus with the whole Liberty Rebellion and stuff. Like, rip to my Michigan friends out there roughing it out, with everything that's happening. But I would also like to say, like, these protests against, like, the Stay-at-Home Act and for, like, liberty and freedom, are not just happening, like, Michigan and Idaho. They're happening, like, all over the place, and there's a lot more planned to happen within the next couple of weeks. So let's hope, like, that they don't decide to call martial law on our asses because we're being too crazy. Um, but yeah, on Wednesday, essentially, protesters, most who self-identified as Trump supporters. Not surprised there. They flocked to Lansing, Michigan to protest against the Stay-at-Home Act. While protest organizers plans to have people, like, they plan to have people stay in their cars and block traffic, many did not listen to that. A lot of people just came on foot in large groups, completely ignoring the idea to physically distance. And also, due to traffic jams, health workers could not get to work, which means that they could not help people who are currently sick in the hospital with COVID-19. Which to me is pretty fucked up. A lot of ambulances like couldn't get through, and things like that. And people, like, essentially the protesters claimed, like, the government has been treating us like babies. Yeah, like, y'all acted like babies. That's why they gotta treat you like babies. We gonna treat you the way you fucking act. I'm sorry, but that's just how it's gonna work. Someone also said she didn't trust these so-called scientists and thought herd immunity would kick in by now, so we'd all be, like, chilling. Let me tell you something about herd immunity, girl. At least 80% of the population has to be, like, infected or immune for herd immunity to even work, and that's only for certain diseases, like, in illnesses. Like, some, it needs to be, like, at least 95% of the population. So, you're basically just saying you're trying to get sick then. Like, because if it's 95% of the population that's needed for herd immunity to work, then you're very likely to get sick since you're the one that's outside right now, not listening to social distancing rules. There were actually even arguments between protesters as well, like, that happened, mostly on the internet, but, like, some of the people who protested were concerned that people had brought rifles to the rally, and they were also, like, leaving their cars to swarm on foot. Like, originally, the people who were, like, organizing this did not plan for people to come on foot. They were like, everyone stay in your fucking cars. We're just trying to, like, block traffic, which still is not good, but it got way more out of hand than the people who are organizing it expected. And Governor Whitmer actually ended up responding to the protest, and it basically went something like this. She was like, yo, I understand your frustration. It's okay to be angry. You can be angry at me, but understand that the people who get the virus, they die alone. And I was like, fuck, like, that is dark. Like, she was like, yeah, I understand that you're concerned about your freedom, but also remember that the people who die from this virus, they don't get to see their families ever again. They stuck in the hospital alone to rough it out by themselves. So, I mean, I guess that's a pretty big fuck you to all the people who are going out there right now and protesting the Stay-at-Home Act. I would also just like to add that there have been more than, like, 27,000 confirmed cases in the state of Michigan and at least 1,700 deaths. So it's not like Michigan doesn't have, like, people who are infected either. And I would just like to end it with us looking at some lovely pictures of the protest. Oh, that's a lovely one. Comparing Whitmer to Hitler, who killed thousands of people. Just like what this virus is doing, actually. You know what never gets old? Rednecks and their guns. I bet their peepees are small. Even Pharaoh freed slaves during a plague. Buddy, do you even know what that Bible story is about? Because the only reason he freed the slaves was so God would stop the plague from killing the Egyptians. The plague wasn't even killing the slaves because they were Jewish and followed the word of God. And I'm sorry, but this virus don't discriminate. It don't care where you from or if you have pure white Aryan blood. Freedom is essential. Okay, yeah, tell that to all the people of color in this country, buddy, whose freedom is always being violated. Alright guys, well, this has been fun, interesting, and proved to me once again how stupid people can be. So I guess with all that being said, I'll see y'all in the next video.